And if you do, please feel free to rename yourself or stay off camera if you prefer not to have your name or face appear in our recording. It is going to be posted to our website later so that others who aren't able to join us in person can have access to this valuable information. Thank you all so much for spending your lunchtime with us today. We are so grateful to have these three accomplished presenters with us. Before we start, I have to offer the usual preamble that this is offered for general informational purposes. It does not constitute legal advice. If you have legal questions specific to your situation, we encourage you to seek out a reputable immigration law attorney like the three with us today. We can help provide referral for that. But let me introduce three amazing attorneys, Minwon Cho, Carolina Curbelo, and Reana Garcia of the American Institute of Immigration Law and Policy and the American Immigration Lawyers Association, New Jersey chapter. We are so grateful to have their thoughtful and expert advice today. We will share a link to a place where you can read their three very long and distinguished bios, but we have a lot to get into, so let me turn it over to our first presenter, Minwon Cho. Thank you, Minwon.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you for hosting this conversation. Very timely, and then something that is really kind of impacting our communities. I've been actually kind of looking for these opportunities, and then I really kind of appreciate that all three of us, having this opportunity, and then to present the most important information to our, AAPI business owners. So that said, I want to start with the first one. Yes, and then so eyes at the doors. If you look at the first slide, it says eyes at the door and the quick action guide for business owners. So today, what we are going to do is basically so we're gonna broken down into three separate presentations. First, I'm going to provide these, potential scenarios and then provide you with some sort of the foundation or legal and some sort of the framework for business owners when business owners encounters with the eyes at the work site. And then Carolina also has done some Know Your Rights already for the past few weeks. So she's going to provide some sort of the practicalities of these frameworks and how it actually kind of works at the work site and what are the common questions that she's been receiving so far from her representations presentation. That's something that she's going to share. And then also finally, Reana Garcia, she's also going to, explain about what's the additional resources and then, the hotlines or other support that business owners can potentially find. So that's how it's going to be. Now, that said, let's start with the first slide. So I know many of you are concerned, and you should be, okay? What we are seeing right now, this is actually kind of unprecedented in scale and approach. I mean, all of you guys have seen in the, social medias and the TVs are all over the place. Okay, so my goal today is not to create panic. Rather, I want to give you a practical tools and clear guidance and the confidence to protect your business and your employees and yourself when enforcement arrives. Because at this time, we can no longer treat encounters with federal agents as a hypothetical scenarios, as you have seen that's actually happening. And then my next actually three slides is gonna actually show us what's happening in northern New Jersey. So, having said that, Shara, can you show me the next slide, please? Yes, next slide. So this is the data that frames the current landscape. The first one, detention have surged massively in the past year. So as of January 2025, it was approximately 73,000 people are in ICE custody. That's up from fewer than 40,000 in January 2025. Okay. So we're talking about like almost 83% increase in just 1 year. Okay. So the enforcement is actually kind of accelerating. Okay. So in fiscal year, the federal fiscal year 2024, average rate of arrest by ICE is around, less than 300, the people daily basis. Okay, that's their own statistics, by the way. But that number had increased over 750 in May 2025. And then White House at that time even set the target to arrest 3,000 people per day. That's almost like over a million per year. Okay. So, to put that in a perspective, that's roughly the population of the entire state of the Rhode Island. Or if we compare that to the New Jersey population, that's almost a little bit more than 1/10 of the New Jersey population. So this is more like systematic expansion. That's the point that we want to make here. The next slide, please. So next one. So this is a data from the Cato Institute based on ICE, own records. So 73% of the newly detained individuals, they have no criminal conviction. That means enforcement is no longer limited to individuals with serious criminal histories. So it's broadening dramatically. So that was the case in the past. The prior to this administration, there's a certain thing called the priority, enforcement priorities. So they go after someone who has criminal convictions. The conviction has to have violence and all those the priorities. Now, based on these statistics, stats, it shows that it is no longer the case. So in fact, only 5% of the individual booked into ICE detention had a violent criminal convictions now. So I just want to focus on only 5%. That means majority of them, many others, only committed maybe traffic, maybe the very very minor immigration violations. So it's no longer after criminals and the heinous, the sex traffickers or something like that. This is just it's way more than what we can actually kind of anticipate. So the enforcement is no longer concentrated on what they call public safety, threats. So it goes beyond that. So it is expanding to workplaces, public spaces, and community hubs, the places where your employees and your customers and your operations intersect. So when I say this matter now, I want us to all remember that the landscape has fundamentally shifted since the beginning of the last year. So next slide, please. So now this is like a kind of, by the way, so when I actually kind of prepared this one, that's as of February 1. I mean, we have this, the record has changed since then, but I'm still, this shows the what's happening right now. So here in New Jersey, we've seen enforcement actions at a variety of workplaces and public spaces over the past year and early this year. Okay, where that includes warehouses, markets, laundromats, and public streets and transit areas. Okay, they all been sites of the ICE activities. Okay, this map we have in here, this has been marked out of with some more. This is more like a kind of high profile and well reported incidents in 2025 and early 2026. But I believe that everyone in this room knows that there are other that never make the news. Okay, if we step back and look at them as a whole, I think we can notice that these aren't just kind of random one-off events. The pattern we are seeing here with this map is that enforcement is very broad and it's persistent and increasingly opportunistic. So it's not just targeting a specific type of business or a single aspect. Okay. So New Jersey extra kind of incidents basically include seafood markets, warehouse, laundromats. Okay. So the common thread is that these are businesses where it can be hard to separate public and private areas. I'm gonna actually kind of discuss more about the importance of separation between public areas and private areas later on. But by their nature, these the spots that I'm listing, these are the spaces where customers gather and interact with more public-facing spaces like storefronts and dining areas and parking lots. But those same spaces also make them easily accessible to enforcement agents. Okay, imagine you own a laundromat. Okay, even if your business isn't a primary target of an ICE operations or activity nearby, right outside of your door, okay, or in the parking lot or in the street, can still disrupt your employees and your customers. And chances are, agents will enter your premises and ask questions you may not be prepared to answer. Okay. What's even more concerning is that we hear about these scenarios mostly when they affect small local businesses compared to corporate clients with chains. And the small businesses have less redundancy and fewer resources. So, for example, like more the business owners who has the multiple store fronts, if anything happens from one, they can also be prepared for the rest of the one. Same goes with the much larger corporations. They can have more coordinated, approach to the situations. But uh, today, what I am actually kind of focusing on, based on my understanding, is small businesses, which has less redundancy and fewer resources. Okay, in that case, having an ICE operation in the general area, or just having one or two employees taken into custody, that can immediately disrupt the entire operations and revenues. So that's why we want to present these, the ideas and information to more business owners. Okay. And then, so having said that, can you actually can show me the next slide? Shweta, next slide, please. Oh, here we go. Oh, hmm. Okay, yeah, that's one. Okay, so now these are the so having said that, now I focus on what is important, why we need to actually kind of what's happening in New Jersey. I mean, as a whole in the country, but specifically in New Jersey, and the why preparation is important. Is important, especially for the small business owners. Now, having said that, so we want to know what kind of interaction that you can expect with eyes at work site. Here are three potential scenarios. First one, this is something that happened actually even before the current administration, which is I-9 workplace audits. And the second one is criminal raids with warrants. This is actually kind of proper raids. And the third one is the one that actually kind of make us most uncomfortable, which is knock and talk without warrants. Okay, I'm gonna go one by one. First, the I-9 workplace audits. So in this case, in this scenario, agent delivers what's called the notice of inspections, or in a short form, NOI. And this is a formal document requiring you to produce your I-9 form and additional employment records. So employees are given a minimum 3 days to produce it, and this is the most structured and predictable interaction. You have a time, you have a notice, and you should have audited your I-9 forms immediately to make sure that they are all complete and accurate. Okay, and a small mistake can be very expensive. So for I-9 workplace audits, I want you to think more of, it's like a kind of tax audits, okay? Something that you should have done properly, when you actually kind of, they have a chance to do so. And then when you got a notice, it's not like a kind of, they ask you to show the documents right away. They give you time to, respond. So basically, you don't have to actually provide any information at that point. Just kind of have 3 days to respond. Check with your immigration attorney, immediately, and you can prepare for that. Now, let's move on to the second one, criminal raids with warrants. So this involves the agent arriving with criminal warrants, judicial orders, authorizing them to make arrests for such property based on probable cause. So they may be looking for specific individuals with outstanding criminal charges or removal orders. In some high priority cases, there are cases where the officer may enter without permissions and use force if that's necessary. But by all means, they have a judicial warrant, and which specifically specifies where they are getting into, who they are looking for, what they're they're trying to search. It's all in there. Okay, this is proper. The third one is the one that makes us most confusing, which is knock and talk. Okay, there's no warrant, there's no notice, and the agent just kind of may ask questions and request entry and demand documents on the spot. Okay, this is more like a knock and talk, and is what catches most business owners off guard. And it has become common strategy these days, precisely because it relies on confusion and pressure. So agent might just not show up, maybe be nice, asking about the employee's paperwork, or they might just kind of try to scare you by hinting that it's in your best interest to cooperate, or else you will get arrested. Most of the things that they are saying that is you are obstructing federal operations when you are not. That's all they are keep repeating them, make you feel like kind of uncomfortable, and that it is your best interest to cooperate as they claim, when in fact it's not. Okay. So unfortunately, in this kind of tense scenario like this, business owners often just go along with them, okay, without realizing they can actually say no. So that's what this whole presentation is about. Okay, next slide, please. So all these separate, the scenarios, I'm going to talk about what to do as a business owner and what to do after. Okay, there's always after part is also important, and because that can actually kind of set the foundation for what kind of remedies that you can seek later on, and then how to prepare beforehand. Those three things that I'm going to, explain about those three separate scenarios. As said, next slide, please. So first scenario, so when ICE agent just kind of showing up and then saying that, hey, um, you know, uh, I'm looking for somebody, okay? And then in that case, can they search without permissions? Or what can you say or do? If they just kind of show up and they're saying that, hey, I'm looking for Mr. So and so. Does he work here? Something like that, okay? Here's your response. Okay, what to do part. So next scenario, please. So now we have like a Fourth Amendment. This is constitutional rights comes in, okay? And the Fourth Amendment applies to the private area, okay? That's what is important, okay? So that's why these, the analysis is important. First, public area are spaces like lobbies, dining areas of a restaurant, and the reception areas and retail floors. Okay. ICE agent, they can actually enter just like any other customer, right? And that because it's public area. Okay. They don't need your permission. By the way, by all means, that's what your business is about. You have people you want you already allow them to come in. Okay, but these are spaces where the general public welcomes, and so that's what we call the public area. That's the first part of the agent entering public area. The yes or no. Okay. Now, then what is no? Which part is like, oh, this is not public area? That's normally what we call the back offices. Okay, employee break rooms or storage area or kitchens for the restaurant. So whatever it is, the behind the counter is we call it, that's more like a non-public areas. Okay. Then Asian, when they actually kind of come in, the first question, hey, is Mr. So working here? And then your answer was no or yes or whatever it is. When you say they were, oh no, I know somebody actually kind of walking into the this behind the counter and then trying to enter. Okay, that's what you have to ask this. So you need they for them to actually kind of enter those non-public area, they need judicial warrant. Okay, so judicial warrant, when we refer to warrant broadly, there are two different types. Okay, judicial warrant is a formal written court order signed by a judge, mostly like a district court judge. So when you see the warrant, it says U.S. District Court, blah, blah, blah. So you have to see the name of the judge and the court, something like that. That's more like a judicial warrant, okay? This authorized judicial warrant authorizes specific search of a private property. So in your commercial, the area, those kind of, back, offices, those area is considered, the private property, so private area. Okay. So that judicial, the warrant actually authorized the search for that one, as opposed to administrative warrant. That's more of internally, the supervisors, they give more like a kind of, order to their agent that, hey, you can actually kind of make an arrest and you can take, they conduct these civil actions against someone who actually kind of violated immigration, their terms and conditions, something like that. That's more like a administrative warrant, okay? That document issued by the DHS or ICE, that's not the same as judicial warrant, although it says warrant, it's not really kind of judicial warrant, and that it does not give agent the right to enter non-public area without consent. Now, this part is important. Non-public area is important, and then also consent part is important because consent has to be clear and voluntary. Now, that makes a huge difference later on when you actually kind of fight whether the search was proper or not. So that's why all these kind of, the education and, know your rights presentation is about. Knowing your rights properly and then clearly, indicating that you are not consenting it, and then don't give them some sort of the implied consent by just kind of showing the door, showing the way, and then don't say anything, so that their lawyers can later claim that, hey, so look at your what your client did. That's like an implied consent. Okay. So when an agent says that I have a warrant, your response should be, well, is it a judicial warrant? May I see? Okay, so you can always ask. It's just kind of like the same things like when you get to the store. How much is it? The same things. You ask for the judicial warrant. It's not, you're not really kind of obstructing their operations. That's your right. That's what we are talking about. That's your right to ask. What is this about? Do you have a judicial warrant? Okay. So just kind of quickly, they go over this slide once again. So you want to see if the agent is entering public area, there's nothing that you can do about it. And then second, if the agent need a warrant or not. So if it's a, the private area, like a back office, and then all those, the employees break rooms and storage area, those areas considered non-public, so that requires the warrant. That warrant has to be judicial warrant, not administrative warrant. Okay. Now, next slide, please. Okay. Now, if things works out in perfect world, just the way that I described, then it's not a problem. And then, but you have seen the videos and things all the time that it doesn't work like that way. So here's the reality, okay? And that this like a kind of ICE memo 20. So although it was a kind of internal memo that was issued back in May 2025, it was revealed only recently. So what happened back in May 2025, ICE headquarters, they issued an internal memo that fundamentally changed how they interpret their authority to enter homes and private residencies, and including those the private, non-public area of the commercial properties. Okay, so uh, previously, before this memo, so for all those ICE training materials for decades, okay, and the federal law enforcement guidelines, they held that the agent needed a judicial warrant, okay, which is signed by the judge to forcibly enter someone else's home. That was their training until May 2025. Now, an ICE administrative warrant was understood at the time to just kind of authorize arrest and civil action, as I mentioned previously. That's just kind of we have this specific person that we need to arrest, and that the civil action is going on. This is different from the judicial warrant, which allows agent to forcibly enter the private area and the private property. Okay, but this memo, the back in May 2025, based on that, so basically, the memo basically says that there's a kind of flight risk, and that they claim a very, very narrow exception, like a kind of exigent circumstances that which can potentially justify entering the private property forcibly, which is not held constitutional, by the way. So, but anyway, just to explain what that is about. So based on that memo, ICE now basically, you might have heard those kind of seen those kind of videos. ICE agents yelling at these people that no, so we don't need warrants at all, and we can actually kind of enter anywhere, or something like that. So I just want to explain that what's the kind of the basis behind their claim. Okay. So the agent. So based on that memo, agent now can forcibly enter a person's home using only admissive warrants if that person is has a final order of removal from an immigration judge. Um, so they basically claiming they don't need a judge, the federal court judge's permission to break into someone else's home. Okay, they only need their own internal, paperwork. By the way, this actually kind of, based on this, they actually kind of did warrant, like a judicial warrant list, entries, and then that was litigated in Minnesota, and then district court judge found that was unconstitutional. Okay, that has been already actually kind of determined. And then also nationwide, effect wise, I believe there's a one, I think, group of Hispanic businesses over in Massachusetts. There's some sort of litigation going on in Massachusetts that hasn't been actually kind of finalized in order to have more like kind of nation wide impact. So that's something that you should be aware of. Okay. So anyway, let's move on to the next slide. Next slide. So in this case, you have to remember what to do and then what to do after and then how to prepare. First, you want to verify the authority. So you want to clearly ask, can I see your badge and identifications in this kind of scenario? Do you have a judicial warrant? Okay. And then you want to state actually kind of non-consent clearly. I do not consent to entry into non-public area without a judicial warrant. You definitely want to clearly say, you can even repeat that, okay? And then you can say that I'm not obstructing, and then I'm just merely asserting my Fourth Amendment rights. You can say that, and then have someone else actually kind of record your interactions. These are all preparations that you can potentially have, okay? And then you
Sorry
don't
to,
necessarily.
sorry to chime in, Minwon. I just want to make sure, just for time, because we do have other slides too to get to. So,
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. So after the visit, and then what you wanted to do is you want to record all the names and badges and time locations of the visits, what areas they entered, what questions they asked, and any items, seized or documents requested. You want to actually kind of document that, okay? And then how to prepare? You want to have a signage in your business, okay? Which area is private, employees only, no public access beyond this point. That's very, very important things that you want to do. As I said, the consent, those kind of things, and then especially the public area, the private area, in order to have more like an implied kind of setting, having some those kind of objective, the evidence is always helpful. Okay. So I'm going to move on to next scenario two. So next slide, please. So next slide is, ICE agent arrived and asked for I-9. So I'm going to make these things very, very quick because, we have other things we want to go forward to, but this is more about like a kind of I-9. If they ask for the I-9, this is the easiest one because you don't have to answer anything, okay? Again, when should you produce for my nine? You have the 3 days to respond, so you don't have to produce or respond anything right away. And then what should you avoid is you don't necessarily have to actually kind of answer anything. You can simply say that thank you, and then I have to actually kind of speak to my the attorney, and then we'll respond to the notice of the inspections within the time that's provided. That's what you want it to do. Okay, let's see the next slide. This is very quick. So you can, in this scenario, I-9, you can actually request time, and then again, you don't want to volunteer the information verbally, so you want to, so if they ask you who works here, how long has Mr. Someone and so worked here, and do you know, someone has work authorization. Again, you don't have to answer no, any of those. Okay, just saying that up. Okay, just wanted to clarify, is this I-9 audit? Okay, well, then I have to speak to my, attorney in order to respond to any of them. We would be happy to actually kind of coordinate with your actually kind of request, something like that. Okay, you don't have to actually answer any of those. Now, what to do after? Obviously, you have to actually kind of, audit your I-9 form internally, and then you also want to have your employees at their rights, and then again, for I-9 audits, I would strongly recommend to work with the business immigration attorney who would be able to, to help you with this I-9 audit. Okay. And then, this attorney should be able to actually help to develop a response protocol in this kind of scenario. Next slide. So this is also important. This is also can happen all the time. And then what if that, not can talk scenario, and then actually, they actually kind of, detain, pick up, arrest somebody. That's one of your employees, okay? And then how can you do as a business owner, and then how to, prepare such incidents? Let's look at the next scenario, okay? First, what to do. Next slide, please. Yes. So first thing that you have to do is, again, same things. You don't want to obstruct or anything, or flee, run away, or anything like that. That's going to only escalate the situations. So what you wanted to do is record the names and badge numbers of agent, and the note the time and locations, and observe what areas are searched, and the documents who is detained, and then where they are taken. Okay. So that's important one. And then you have to contact the lawyer, immediately, because, contact the immigration lawyer as soon as possible. That's going to help to locate them where being transferred out of the states. Sometimes, they can be transferred within 48 hours. So get a hold of them quickly is really, really important. Now, so having said that, let's go to the next slide. So before we actually kind of move on to the next slide, I want to have all of you folks remember this. First, you want to control the encounter. Okay, so you may not be able to stop ICE from showing up, or control the entire the actions, but you do have a control in those first moments. Okay, staying calm, setting clear boundaries, de-escalating by slowing the interactions and limiting unnecessary conversations, and documenting what's happening. All of these can bring order to a very chaotic situations, okay? And it also reassures your employees and your community that you are responding with intention, okay? Secondly, you know your rights, okay? And then finally, preparation beats panic. So you want to have that signage, you want to have internal protocol that is set up. You want to have somebody who is going to actually kind of report the situations. You want to have someone who is actually kind of specifically, the categorized as a person to interact with the ICE agent, something like that. So that'll be very, very helpful. That said, I'm gonna pass this, the opportunity to my colleague Reana.
Thank you, Minwon. So we're going to do some hypotheticals, a little bit of practice, so we can, understand what's at play. And thanks to Minwon letting us know what our rights are and sort of the scenarios, the incidents in which you can encounter ICE. So there are some other slides. Oh. Okay. So one of the important things to know is when you encounter ICE, you want to have there's some what we call de-escalation tips. Given what we've seen in Minneapolis, and the public reaction to what has happened to the death of two U.S. citizens, in light of what has happened with the ICE encounters in Minneapolis, we want to reiterate the really importance of de-escalation. So you always want to remain calm, both the employees and the employers. You don't want to run. It's really hard to control people's reactions, but you want to reiterate to your staff, to your employees, to remain calm and do not run. Because if not, this would create a presumption in the eyes of ICE that if you're running away from them, you're fleeing, that you might have committed a crime, or you're aware that you have a removal order. So you want to remain calm. You want to keep your hands visible. This is really important to make sure that you show that you're not have any weapons, that you may not have an object, so we want to just try to de-escalate. One of the things, if they do come into the public area of your employment and they start asking either yourself or an employee, is one of the first things you want to train your employees is to ask the ICE officer, am I free to go? In some instances, as we've seen in the news, sometimes you're not able to say this. Sometimes individuals are immediately apprehended, arrested, and detained, and you don't have that opportunity to voice, am I free to go? You should not sign anything without a lawyer present. Even if you don't have a lawyer, you can still invoke your right to have counsel. So if you don't understand what is being said to you, what is being, the document that's being presented to you, you do not want to sign anything without an attorney. Also, Minwon already went over this. You should know your rights. There's a lot of material out there. Read it both in the public, employment setting, even when you are using public transportation. And if you don't have a lawyer, you can always contact legal aid. Reana is going to talk about the resources that are available, not only through the state, but also with a lot of nonprofit organizations in New Jersey. Next slide, please. So scenario one, ICE enters the business in the public area of a business. So this is what happens. So ICE officers enter the lobby, your storefront, the dining area, or other space open to the public and ask to speak with employees. What should you do? So Reana, you're going to be my employer, okay?
Hi.
What should you do if you're the employer?
So the first thing you want to do is if the ICE officers are trying to enter the business, you want to stop them as close to the point of entry as possible. Okay. So you don't actually want them to get all the way to the counter if you can keep them at the door. So especially if you have a glass storefront, you can kind of see outside and see people's reactions. If they're ICE officers, they might have the vest on that says ICE or police. So again, trying to get them as close to that door as possible. And when you get to that door, the first thing you're going to ask them is to identify themselves and if they have a warrant on them.
Especially if they have a judicial warrant that's signed by a judge, and it specifically names your employee. And also the property, the property or the person to be searched, and also if there's anything that's belonging to the employee. So that's really important to voice that.
And remember, they don't always tell the truth. So sometimes you just have to be careful when you're asking questions. Don't volunteer anyone's names. Push them to give you the information because, again, they might have an administrative warrant or they might have nothing and they're just trying to test to see how far they can get into the business. So again, when you're having that interaction, it's very important not to give them information and to keep asking them, well, who are you here for? Make them identify the person.
Great. Scenario number two, let's go to the next slide. So scenario number two, this is when ICE questions the employees at the workplace. So ICE officers approach workers and begin asking questions about their identity, immigration status, where they were born. So Reana, I'm going to have you answer this in two different ways. The first is if you're the employee and you're approached by an ICE officer, what do you do?
So If you are an employee approached by an ICE officer, it's important to know where you are in the restaurant. Again, if you are, or in the business, if you are in a space that's not open to the public, the first thing I would say is you're not allowed to be back here. This is for employees only. Again, with all of these situations, you want to be saying these things out loud so that later on you can always assert your rights. So you're not allowed in this area. This is not open to the public. When it comes to information that they are seeking about yourself, you do not have to incriminate yourself. You do not have to violate your own rights. So, with that being said, if they ask you your status, you don't need to answer that question. If they ask you for your identity, yes, you do have to provide them with your identity or with an ID. If you have a passport and you don't have a state ID, I would highly encourage that you go get a state ID so you can present them something alternative to a passport. But you do not have to incriminate yourself and tell them that you don't have status. You don't have to incriminate yourself and say that you are not from the United States. So those are the biggest things that you have to be weary about.
And I think, and as an employee, you have the right to invoke, right to remain silent. And if there's other employees around you, it's really important that somebody is filming this at a safe distance, in case, later on, if someone is detained, that information can be provided to their attorney. Also, if you're the employer, you might want to have a plan in place that Minwon mentioned, sort of a protocol. So if the employer is the one, there's a supervisor interfacing or the boss interfacing with ICE, you want to make sure that you have that individual interfacing with ICE, maybe an employee, maybe another, like a manager, videotaping the occurrence. And if you are not comfortable videotaping, make sure that there's observers so that later on they can write down what factually happened and provide that to their attorney. Okay, let's go to the next scenario. So scenario number 3, ICE attempts to enter the private area of the business. So ICE officers attempt to enter areas such as the kitchen, the warehouse, the office, or an employee-only space. Usually these areas are designated by some sort of signage. And if you don't have signage, especially in small businesses, it's really important that you create, get some signage that designates like, okay, this is, this door goes to the kitchen, or this is only for employee only. So it's really important. And sometimes in some businesses, it's really hard to put up such signage, but I would really encourage small business owners to sort of create some sort of signage. Now, it may not protect you from ICE coming in and invading your space, but it's really important when you're videotaping or there's observers to sort of note there was this private space designation, and you tell your attorney that later on when those rights are violated. So, Reana, what should you do if, in this case, ICE just barges into the kitchen area of a restaurant?
Well, again, the first thing you don't want to do is run. So a lot of people have a tendency to try to run out the back door. As soon as they see you running, they're going to have a reasonable suspicion that something is not correct. So again, they're looking at people who don't look like they belong here, have accents. Now you're running. You are going to escalate the situation really quickly. The best thing to do is everyone stop, take a deep breath, have that plan in place again of someone who has status, speaks English, who can intervene and say, you're not supposed to be back here. You're not authorized to be back here. And trying to create those buffers. Again, no one has to incriminate themselves. So having that plan in place is key to make sure that a manager or someone who can calmly handle the situation, who speaks English, who may be white presenting, and or who has status so that they can assert the business's rights more so than the other people who are more vulnerable.
Great. Let's go to the next slide. So post-encounter actions. Now, Minwon mentioned this as well. So what you want to do is promptly document the factual account of the encounter while memories are fresh. And this could be through video, and you want to be able to have like a reasonably safe distance. Now, we've seen with in the media, in encounters with ICE that folks, will try to sort of keep a reasonable distance. ICE may not like that you're videotaping, but you have a right to film, an ICE encounter. I would say if you're instructing your employees or you as the employer, create a sort of a plan of action of like, who do you want to do the videotaping or the documenting of what has happened? You can't force your employees to do this. I mean, they have to feel comfortable. Maybe you want to have train somebody in your staff who's a manager, a supervisor to take care of, handling like the observation or the videotaping while another supervisor or a boss is handling that interaction. It could be intimidating at times. So that's why this is more of a discussion that has to be had internally. The other thing is you want to obtain itemized receipt for any property, records, or any devices removed. So you don't know when ICE comes in, or not only are they will be apprehending and arresting individuals, but they might be seizing property. So, business records, any kind of computers, any, monitors, could be cell phones. So it's really important to get a record of all that and provide that to your attorney, because sometimes that information could be protected. And other times, you want to make sure that, some of that those devices, those records could be the employee themselves. So you want to protect also the employee as well as the employer's records as well. The next step would be to consult your attorney. So you would, in a situation like this, you would probably call, Minwon or myself or Reana. If something was to happen, you had this ICE encounter immediately, because you want to, number one, you want to be able to preserve evidence. Number two, you want to be able to figure out with your attorney what would be the next legal challenges that you would have to take. And also you want to sort of do some sort of coordination, some sort of follow-up with your attorney and also possibly your employment attorney. Because in this sort of area that we're in, not only are individuals' immigration rights being violated, but potentially the employees' rights could be potentially violated from a worker standpoint. So it's really important to speak not only to immigration counsel, but also to employment counsel as well. Because, this is a very delicate area. Things are happening very, very fluidly, and you have to get advice. And so what we're trying to do is give you sort of like practical tips that you should do. So make sure you document everything that occurred. If items were taken, you want to document that as well. And number three, you want to speak to an attorney immediately to sort of protect your rights, to preserve the information, and also to help you coordinate for next steps. And I think that's all my slides right now. So I'll turn it over to you, Reana.
So just because we are short on time, when it comes to attorneys, we've talked a lot about today having an action plan. It's very important that everyone who owns a business has an action plan. Who to contact, who's going to be a point person, where are you keeping all this information of either videos taken or receipts taken. So when you're doing all that, the important thing is to have an attorney who's a credible attorney. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't know how to find a credible attorney. So the first thing you're going to see in most attorneys' offices, they're going to have something similar to this. Okay. So every attorney is going to have their certificate of either where they went to law school or when they were actually admitted to the bar. Okay. They're big certificates. They should be on the wall behind your attorney. If for whatever reason you go to an attorney's office and they don't have those things and you don't feel comfortable, there are two great resources for you. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. Okay. So the two resources are, first, the New Jersey Court's website. Okay. If you go to the New Jersey Court's website, you will see that there is a way to look up an attorney search. All you have to do is Google New Jersey attorney search. From here, you type in whoever you want to go do a consult with. You hit I'm not a robot, you hit search. It'll tell you the location of that attorney and if they're in good standing with the bar. Those are the two most important things. If they are not active, meaning they're not in good standing, it's not a good attorney to go talk to. On the immigration side, all three of us are members of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Okay. And our website has a great resource. So all you have to do is type in AILA attorney lookup, okay, in your search. It'll bring you to this link. You're going to type in an attorney's name. For example, let's type in Miss Curbelo. So she's in New Jersey. I'm going to go have a consult with her. And if this works correctly, yep, there she is. She's right here. Credible attorney. Okay. These types of resources are what you want to make sure you are going to the right places. There are a lot of places where they have notarios. That is not an attorney. Okay. It's really important to understand the difference. They cannot represent you in court. At times, they don't often fill out forms correctly. There's a lot of fraud with these notario services. So you have to be extremely careful when using them. It is better to just spend the money, go talk to an attorney, have someone that if you can either have them on retainer or have their phone number to quickly dial if you end up in a situation with ICE, that you have that contact already set up. So again, you're not looking for it the day of your ICE encounter. Have these conversations beforehand, meet these attorneys beforehand, so you can have those action plans in place. And now, again, because of the time, I'll stop there. If anyone else has any questions about how to find an attorney, other resources for attorneys, we can definitely provide that information after the training today. But until then, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I can start us off with a question. What does a well-prepared workplace look like? Sort of like practically. I mean, you've sort of like sprinkled a lot of these steps here and there, but can you just sort of summarize like what does the person behind the counter know, right? Like what's on the door to the private room? It's like what does really strong preparation look like to you?
Okay, guys, do you want me to take this? Okay. The good preparations in this scenario is having this, first of all, you want to have all of your staff aware of these scenarios that we just kind of discussed. And then first, you want to have someone who is designated as a person going to interact with ICE agent. So when there are multiple people in the store, when ICE agent shows up, and then when they start asking questions, they don't necessarily have to answer anything. Oh, so you're an ICE agent. We have someone who is actually kind of designated to communicate and interact with you. Okay, can you just kind of hold up on there? And then I'm gonna quickly kind of find and get that person for you. That would be a good start. And then second, you want to have specifically designated area, one that is public, one that is not public. So you want to have make it very, very clear and conspicuous so that later you can claim that ICE agent actually kind of entered without permission. And then finally, the person who is going to communicate with the ICE agent should know about all those kind of things, what we just kind of described, so that they can clearly mention that, well, they are actually not consenting any of them. And then the information that they are providing is not something that they are willing to, or in certain scenario, they can just kind of simply say that, I'm not actually kind of, providing any information, and then I'm looking for my attorneys, something like that. So having those kind of internal protocols set up, including the potential hotline if anything happens, and then have some, the attorney on a retainer, that would be a good preparation.
I also think signs, again, there is a question as to whether or not ICE agents will abide by them, but you don't have to let everyone into your area of business. Just because there is an access point to the public, you have the right as a business owner to pick who is a patron of your business or not. So you can put a sign that says for patrons only, meaning for people who are only going to come and buy my service or buy whatever I'm selling. You don't have to leave it open to the homeless, right? You don't have to leave your business open to whoever just walks in off the street and wants to loiter in there. So, as business owners, you can already start from the front door of setting up boundaries of who is allowed to be inside your business and who is not.
Thank you. And we did get a question. Can ICE ask business owners to stop recording if they are documenting?
Can they ask? Yes. Is it legal? No. So everyone here has a right to record, especially in the state of New Jersey. We have a one consent party state, so you can record anywhere, especially in your own business. For example, you could even have surveillance cameras running inside your business if you wanted to. That way, you don't have to physically take out a phone and record them. But if you have a surveillance system, it's already recording everything. You're going to want audio on those systems. You're going to want to make sure your systems are working properly. But again, you as the business owner very much have a right, you as an individual have a right to record those interactions.
Thank you. If you have any other questions, please feel free to share them with us. We'll try to get you an answer. I also just shared in the chat that if you need help finding a reputable attorney, if you'd like a free Know Your Rights training in your workplace, that's something we can help to facilitate. If you'd like a private sign for your kitchen or staff room, we can help you with all of that. You can contact us at advocacy@aapinewjersey.org or call text 973-298-0966. You are not alone. We are here for you. People like Reana, Carolina, and Minwon are here for you. Thank you so much to our three presenters today, and thank you all so much for taking the time to be more prepared.